for me, spirituality is something that starts within me. So it is, when I talk about spirituality, it is actually my essence. It's who I am truly, not our conditioned self or trained self, but it's really my essence. So what I stand for, what I believe in, the light that shines from within.
What questions do you ask your clients to help them access this place and this connection?
My job is very often to hold the space for them to dive a bit deeper and to meet at a deeper level, to look at the root causes for certain issues, to then...
Welcome to the Spirituality in Leadership podcast, hosted by Andrew Cohn. Andrew is a trusted counselor, coach, and consultant who works with leaders and teams to increase productivity and fulfillment in the workplace. If you'd like to connect with Andrew about individual or team coaching, leadership workshops, or team alignment, please go to www.lighthouseteams.com. Enjoy the podcast.
In this episode of the podcast, I speak with Erika Kleestorfer, and Erika is a longtime practitioner, corporate leadership development specialist, working for IBM, first in Austria and in other parts of the world. She's had her own coaching and leadership development practice for quite some time. And just by way of quick overview introduction, she's a remarkable resource for understanding culture, changing workforces, individual leaders' needs. And she talked a bit about cultivating healthy soil for growth and productivity and high yields on teams. And in very practical, simple ways, I appreciate her expertise and her perspective. And I think you'll enjoy the conversation. Welcome back to the Spirituality in Leadership podcast. And I'm really thrilled to have with me my friend, Dr. Erika Kleestorfer from Vienna. And I'm so glad that you're with us and agreed to be on this podcast, because I just love your perspectives about leadership and life. And I'm sure you have some interesting things to share about this topic of spirituality and leadership. And I don't know what they will be. And it's exciting for me. Erika is a leadership development consultant and executive coach. She has worked globally with IBM. She has worked with Duke Continuing Education in Europe and around the world. She's had her own consulting firm for almost 20 years, which means you must have started when you were 15. So good for you. And it's a pleasure to have your perspective here, I will say, in advance. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Andrew.
And this, as we've talked about, this podcast is really about the intersection of the spiritual dimensions of us as people, or what people might label spiritual. Not everybody uses the same language. That's not important, I don't think. And how those qualities are so important in leadership now more than ever, in terms of business success, and also in terms of team cohesion and individual fulfillment, et cetera. And so that the way we work on these dimensions for ourselves and how they are needed in the workplace, and how does that happen, and what have you seen, and all of that. So I'm curious to know for you, when I talk or introduce this notion of spiritual dimensions of us as human beings, how is that part of your work or part of even your own philosophy about leadership?
Well, first of all, thanks again for the invitation. I love talking about spirituality and the intersection with leadership, because this is what I strongly believe in. Because for me, spirituality is something that starts within me. So it is, when I talk about spirituality, it is actually my essence. It's who I am truly, not our conditioned self or trained self, but it's really my essence. So what I stand for, what I believe in, the light that shines from within. And light, it sounds a little bit esoteric, but for me, light means my own clarity, my own strength, my values. So what I fight for also. And I think it's so important to know actually who I am truly. And especially as a leader, it's important because of my behavior has an impact on the team I'm leading, on the organization I'm working for. So for me, these are crucial questions we have to ask ourselves every single day, actually.
So, okay. So now I feel like I need to ask you, what are the questions, the deeper questions, the most important questions and I know for you practice what you preach. So some of this is about what are the questions that you ask yourself? And another question, a related question might be, what questions do you ask your clients to help them access this place and this connection?
Yeah, for me, it's very much about clarity, asking questions like, as I said, who am I truly, but also as a team, a leadership team, as an organization, who are we truly? So what do we stand for? And I worked, for example, last week with 15 top leaders in an organization, IT company, a global IT company. And I had the impression that they are really open with each other, yet they still stay on the surface. Yeah, so they still polish the surface rather than going a bit deeper and asking also maybe some unpopular questions or asking questions that might hurt because they have not yet an answer to them, or questions like, so how do we deal with the tension and issues that are between different departments? And everyone knows about it since years, but no one really talks about it. So it's, like the elephants in the room. Mm-hmm. And so my job is very often to hold the space for them to dive a bit deeper and to meet at a deeper level, to look at the root causes for certain issues, to then come to the surface again and find solutions that are more sustainable.
And as I hear you describe that, I'm sort of hearing there's work happening on two levels. There's root cause analysis, there's business problem solving, there's all that important cerebral work that we need to do to keep the business running at a high level. And there's also this deeper, more personal, 2 minutes ago, you're talking about the light within each one of us, and now you're talking about root cause analysis. Mm-hmm. And I don't hear the two of those as separate. Mm-hmm. But for you, how do they connect, and how do you speak to your clients about that in a way that it gets traction, mm-hmm. so that you can have both mm-hmm. conversations?
Mm-hmm. I really like how you played back to me, because so you see what I'm talking about. So I think this is what we usually as external facilitators or consultants bring, is to speak their language. So the question is, where do I pick them up? And it's usually where do I meet them? It's usually at the, let's say, factual side, rational side, data analysis. And then once they trust the process, they trust that this space is safe, then you can bring them also more to the emotional side, the side where people open up to talk about their fears, their tension, whatever they're concerned about. But it is really a process. For me, it's like being a gardener, so you have to make the soil soft to then bring in new seeds to blossom. And it's really this groundwork. Do you say that? Groundwork? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think this is what I see quite often, is so that, especially in organizations, and that a bit more old school, and, who are coming from who are very hierarchical, very structured, who are top down, for them, it's really much harder, to open up and to speak about maybe spirituality or softer issues than for an organization who is used to it.
And I feel like I need to ask you this. I thought I'd hold this until later in the conversation, but you've just teed it up a little bit. And what's that like in an IBM? You've worked in IBM, traditional organization, technology organization. And what's it like in Austria, Germany, and just culturally there, as opposed to, say, in the US or in England or in other places where, well, I'm not even going to tell you what my assumption is, but tell me what it's like in your part of the world.
I think you find everything everywhere, so it really has to do with the organization, what they stand for, again, what's their essence and what's the logic of an organization, what are their values, what's their purpose, what they want to bring in the world, the difference they want to do. So are they more conscious about what's going on in the world, or are they just driven by numbers, figures, and stakeholders? So it really differs. And I've seen everything also here. So there are organizations where I'm totally impressed how open they are and that they really look outside the box. They really want to make a difference, not just for the organization, their employees, but of course for their clients. So I wouldn't put them in boxes. I don't want to put any country or culture into a box. However, what I can say is, and as you know also, there are organizations who are still caught, I have the feeling, caught in old structures. And for them, it's so much more difficult to get out because people want to hold on what gives security to them or what they're used to, and to really, I talked to a friend actually today, on my way home, and we talked about change in organizations. And she said she has been working with a team for now 3 or 4 years, a leadership team. And she really tries to bring in some changes regarding cooperation and how they work with each other, the openness they have, the style of cooperation. And she said that even after 4 years, they still fall back into old habits. They still want to talk about our numbers, our figures. They don't want to go to the relationship level, and talk about, hey, how are we doing as a team? Are we really honest to each other? Is this the space where I can get energy and not lose energy? So this is still after 3-4 years difficult to them. So I think to break a pattern, to change culture, that needs years and years and years. Climate is something I can change within days, but not culture.
And how do you describe the difference between climate and culture? I have my way of doing it, but I'm curious to know how you talk about that.
Well, culture is something for me that is expected and reinforced within a certain culture. So, certain manners, certain values. So something that is also expected here to be polite, to be friendly, And if I am like this, then it will be reinforced and also acknowledged. Yeah. And climate for me is more how people feel in an organization. It's more like temperature, and its perception is reality, especially with climate, And I usually I give the example of when you enter a room and let's say it has 20 degrees. I don't know how much it is in Fahrenheit, but let's say 20 degrees. And for some people, this is perfect temperature. And for others, it's too warm. And for the others, it's too cold. We experience the same climate, the same temperature, but the perception might be totally different.
Right.
And culture is also, of course, culture needs time to establish, and culture is not immediately seen. So it's, when you have the iceberg model, culture is actually something that is beneath the iceberg. Yes, it shows in our behavior, but not that it's that obvious immediately.
Right. It's reflected above the surface in behavior, but you can't necessarily spot it right away.
Yes.
So I'm curious to know, what are some ways that you begin to introduce this topic of not necessarily label anything as spirituality, but these deeper connectedness, whether it's light within, inspiration, things like that. How do you begin to plant the seeds to make the soil softer so that these conversations can happen?
That's a good question. I have to say that I love the first hours with a team I have never met before. So the first, you're smiling, so obviously it's because for me, this is it's really like magic, So these are the moments where sometimes strangers meet, if it's an open session, for example, but if it's an existing team, for me still it is magic or a magic moment because you meet people for the first time. You don't know what is going to happen. You don't know who they are. You don't know how they interact with each other. You don't know how their leader, who might also be present, is interacting with them. So it's quite complex. And this is something that I love, because for me, it's very much about observing the dynamics within people, individual people, but the collective also, and sensing the energy that is in the room, sensing also how people act with each other. So is it in a very respectful, supportive way, or is it in a more formal way, where they don't become personal, not private, but personal. So I think it's about observing what's going on. And I usually, at the beginning, I always have a quite strict agenda. So to meet them at a strict plan. So this gives kind of an outlook for them and maybe a security. And then within that frame, I try to stay as flexible as possible and then go with the flow and see where this is leading me. But and usually what I do is at the beginning, I bring in 1, 2, or 3 basic models about teams, about leadership, about communication, just to open up with many examples that are typical for individuals, but also team interactions. And by doing so, I have the feeling they find themselves, in those models and stories and examples, and then it's easier to start or to continue with the conversation.
Right. No, I understand. I think that's true in my experience too. That structure provides safety.
Yeah.
It's like, so you're inviting me into something and you're showing me a little bit of the map. And that map lets me know where I am. I feel more safe. We're moving along. And then perhaps there's the opportunity to open up, if and when the time is right, et cetera.
Yeah. And for me, Einstein said, he said many good things, but there's one quote I love. It's called, "The play is the highest form of research." So I bring in also quotes or, some inspirational sentences that also might open up something.
Can you repeat what he said again? I want to be sure I'm hearing it.
Play is the highest form of research. Is one that I use quite often. The other one is creativity is intelligence having fun. So that it's so important to be creative, but and that to be creative means you have to have really a foundation of competence, and then you can start playing.
Right. Yes, to be comfortable enough to be creative, to be secure enough to be creative. Thank you, by the way, for sharing him with us, as you did in the past. You shared Einstein with us. Thank you. Beautiful. Okay, and I'm curious to know how you've been doing this work for a while, which doesn't mean that you're old, but you've been doing this work for a while, and so I'm curious to know, how have you seen it change, either the willingness to engage in conversations like this, the ways to approach, perhaps there's something shifting with a younger workforce now, or as more of the workforce becomes younger than us and younger. How have you seen things change over the years?
Oh, big question. Many changes. But before I joined IBM in 96, I used to work for 3 other corporations, but we didn't have a lot of training or management development or anything there. So at IBM, what I noticed back then, and it's more than 25 years, I had the impression, what I experienced quite often was, and I had men only most of the time in leadership workshops, I had the feeling they were sitting like this, like, okay, tell me. So it was not like, hey, yes, I want to learn, give me. It was like saturated, it was like, oh, okay, so what else shall I learn or listen? And we had to, and usually, not usually, back then we had a 5-day workshop with those leaders. And I had the impression that the first 2 days, my colleague and I, we really had to sell it to them that this is good for them, and, and that they realize the value of it. And after 2 days, they loved it and they were the biggest fans of the content, but it costed, or it was very draining for me and for us, because it was all the energy we put into it. nowadays I have the feeling that changed, that at least my perception, I have the feeling people who attend workshops I'm leading, that they want to be there, so that they're interested to get ideas, they're interested to learn. What absolutely changed for me is also that back then also it was very interactive, whatever we did. It was also back then already blended learning. I have the feeling that the younger generation, they're really interested in experiential learning. They want to play, they want to feel it, they're open to it. There is not too much shame. If they fail, they fail. So I have the feeling that the younger generation, they're so much more playful, which I love, It's this, trial and error. Of course, what changed dramatically is that we do a lot of online nowadays. And I think the combination is fantastic. So whatever suits the content, whatever makes most sense to deliver content to a specific audience. I don't know, what do you see as changes? What do you see as the biggest changes?
Yeah, I appreciate your asking. It really it varies. So it's not one thing or another. I mean, there are some cultural differences, et cetera, that happens. And of course, organizational culture is a huge, factor. But I think that younger folks now are more, they're more out with a notion of, what are we doing and why are we doing it? The need to connect to the organization's purpose. There's more, certainly, I think, and this has been researched as far as what I've seen, a shorter term view. Like a job is like an education. And once I've learned all there is to learn from this job, I'll move on. I'll graduate and move to the next thing. And there's not the expectation when I was starting my career, back in 2015, no, I'm just kidding. When I was starting my career, it was, when I started in my law firm, the expectation is you'd start in the firm and you'd see yourself in that corner office. Yes. And that was the expectation. Mm-hmm. Whereas now I think it's a very different expectation. And some of that is, I think, misperceived as a sort of entitlement. Like I'm the new young employee, and it's like, tell me what's great about here, and tell me why I should stay. And I'm not perceiving it like that, but rather, I just see it differently. In the world we live in, and it's because of generational changes and generational traumas, et cetera. I think people I'm not going to hand my career to you, Ms. CEO of this company. My career is my career. And I'll be here for a shorter period of time, and not in a negative taking energy way, but rather in I view the career path as different. And because of that, I think there's more pressure on leaders to create an environment that is rewarding, that is satisfying now. Not, I can treat you like shit now, but because you'll get a big payoff later. I don't think that works anymore. To the same degree. And I know that I'm dating myself a certain degree to be perceiving it that way, but it is a little bit different. I have a son who's entering the workforce now at 22, and I hear the questions that he asks, and I watch the way he writes cover letters and interviews and begins to talk with different companies that are coming after him, and what is he asking? And it's largely about experience, the quality of the experience and the learning experience and the opportunity to contribute, perhaps to contribute now, not, put in my time. I'll just do something, very uninspiring for 2 years before I start contributing. No, I think that's changed. But anyway, I don't want to fill this recording with all my thoughts, but that's
yeah, thank you. No, I totally agree with that. So that's also an observation I have, so that people are more demanding, younger people are more demanding, which I like, because they're asking important questions also. And what I've noticed also is, if you create an environment for them to blossom, for them to develop, they stay also years, 5-10 years. So it's not that they want to change every 2-3 years, but if they have the feeling, this is not the place where I can have great experiences, where I can learn, where I can move out of my comfort zone, where I can grow and develop, then they will move on. So it is absolutely, as you said, it is more, not difficult. It is a bit more challenging for leaders because it's not just a given that people are happy there, but they have to do also something for it, which I think is fine because that's also the job of a leader and a manager. So I think that also, actually, that absolutely changed. The leadership nowadays is not just being the functional expert, but it's really, you have to have the expert skills, and you have to have the social emotional skills, and you have to have also methodological. No, say the word. So we will cut it. Method skills, or how to say?
Yes, methodology.
Yes, the methodological skills. Yeah,
sorting out the language. It's all good. But those skills relate to what? Say more about those skills, that group of skills you're talking about.
Yes. Well, as a leader, in the past, usually the expert was promoted to becoming a manager, leader, and some of them actually didn't even want to be a leader, but, they didn't have any other things to promote them. So, okay, let's become a leader. But to have those expert skills is nowadays not enough, because they have to have skills to integrate people, to make them grow, blossom, to have conversations that are difficult, to deal with conflicts, to whatsoever. So it's not just the expert skills, but you have to have the social emotional skills, and you have to have also the skills on which method or which structure or which tool might help us now to solve a problem or to develop people.
Yeah, and I hear you talking about, and when you talk about growth and blossoming, you're back to your soil.
Absolutely.
To use your metaphor.
Absolutely. And this is actually something to bring in a little bit of research, is that in the past 20, 30 years, whenever you read research about what is it that employees expect of the leaders, it's always the same. It's whether it says Simon Sinek or other or Harvard Business Reviews, where you can read it. Usually people expect, I want to be seen in an organization. I want to be heard. I want to have an environment where I can play out my strength. I want to feel like I have my professional home. So belonging. So these are basic human needs. And this did not change, and I think it's even more important now to create that environment for people to feel well and to have the feeling that they can really grow and blossom. And that I work with positive psychology, and there's also this PERMA model, which I also like.
Well, say more about that and how that model connects to what you're talking about.
Yeah, it comes from positive psychology, and Markus Ebner, he's actually a colleague from me from Vienna. He's the father of PERMA Lead, and they still do a lot of research about what is it that what are the ingredients, let's say, of that good soil. So how can you do this groundwork? And they found out 5 different aspects. So PERMA, from permaculture. And P stands for positive emotions. So employees want to feel an atmosphere where they can have fun, but where also they're not afraid to speak up and to say what they don't like about. So positive emotions does not only mean so we are happy all the time and they're only positive feelings, but positive emotion means that, wow, this is an environment where I can be myself. I can have a good day. I can have a bad day. So it's okay. So we experience together positive emotions. Yeah. We speak up. We say what's on our mind. We give each other feedback and so on. The E stands for engagement, that I can play out my strength because my leader, my manager, he or she identifies my strength and puts me in a position where I can bring out and play out my strength. The R stands for relationships. So is this an environment? Is this a team where we have really good relationships, not just superficial relationships that break up with the first conflict, but really strong relationships that last also conflicts, that last, do you say that? That last difficult conversation. Yeah. Then M stands for meaning. And you mentioned it before that people want to know what's the purpose. What's the purpose of this organization, my team, why we're here, why, does it make sense? So they want to understand, why are we here and our contribution, that it matters, that it makes a difference. And the last one, A, stands for accomplishments, that people, again, want to be seen for what they contribute, but they want to also get feedback on an ongoing basis and recognition, and ideally that we celebrate, progress on our way, not just when we finish the marathon, but after maybe 5 kilometers, 10, and so on.
Yeah, beautiful, right? And I also appreciate how that model incorporates some of what we're talking about in terms of these spiritual dimensions of ourselves and how to bring that into the workplace in a very functional, operational, business-focused way.
Absolutely. And again, this is kind of a structure, but within the structure, you can be free and you can explore, and you as a leader can make up your own PERMA.
And what does that look like within your culture, for example, in the specific business? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Interesting. So I'm curious to know if you have any stories to share about how leaders and teams may have made that model their own, how they've used it and how they have grown and used it for their shared benefits.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are different ways to use it. So one is you could also do a 360-degree feedback on your own PERMA, the PERMA you create for your employees. So this is one aspect. You can do a questionnaire also. It's not a 360, it's just a personal questionnaire, and you can do it with the whole team. And then you can also look at it. So what is the consolidated feedback of that individual questionnaire? And that's the easiest, but I think also very effective ways that you show them the model. And this is what I do very often also with existing teams. You show them the model, you walk them through, and then you let them identify where are we right now? Where are we good at already? And where do we want to maybe improve, let go of, so start, stop, continue doing, So this is for me sometimes already a good starting point for deeper conversations, for more open conversations in an existing team. And if they like that, so this beginning, let's say, then you could dive deeper and do the 360 and so on. But this is a good starting point. So to show them the model and then let them evaluate where are they in respect to the different dimensions.
Yeah, that seems like a very, very practical way of approaching it. And again, it shows, here's the model, here's where we are in the model. I feel safe entering into this journey with you, even though, of course, in the process, we may be uncovering some things that, oh, wait, this is a deeper issue. But now we know where it fits in and why it's important.
Yes. And Markus Ebner, who is the founder of this PERMA Lead model, he is working with big corporations for years and years and years. So if they want to have a cultural transformation, from, let's say, top-down approach to a more democratic approach, more participative approach, then they bring in this model and then they have different workshops and different initiatives to actually, bring it to life and to, move from a maybe more rigid soil to a more fluid, flowing soil.
I love how the soil metaphor is continuing to show up in this conversation. Yeah, beautiful. Well, I really appreciate your sharing your experience and your wisdom. And one question I have for you for sure, I want to be sure we captured this in a recording. If people want to learn more about you and the work that you do, where should they look? Where would they find you?
Well, you find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and of course, our homepage. And I'm sure you will add it to the show notes. Or shall I say it? Or...
Please say it. Okay. And then we can put it too.
Yeah, so it's Kleestorfer.com. So www.Kleestorfer.com. And you find all the information you need. And I've also podcast. There are so many things. Thanks for asking. I have also a YouTube channel and I have a podcast, but it's in German, so it might not be that interesting to the English-speaking audience. But it's called Alles Liebe Erika. Leadership starts within you. So it's about self-leadership and leading others.
Nice. Yeah, well, I do look forward to, I won't understand it, but I'd love to hear it. So, and I look forward to learning more about it, as we've talked about. So
Yes, and I look forward to interviewing in my podcast.
yeah, but you don't do too many of these in English, right?
Well, not yet, but
Good.
there's always a beginning.
Let's cross that bridge. We could do that
Yes.
together. Be glad to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your wisdom and the different light that you shed on this important topic.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your interest and thanks for the invitation.
Of course.
Thank you for listening to Spirituality and Leadership. If you want to access this wealth of knowledge and insight on a regular basis, subscribe to the show. Join the network of leaders who want to do and be better. Visit the site at spiritualityandleadership.com to catch all the episodes and learn more. Until next time, take good care of yourself.